It is 6:30.
Good, how are you?
So we will begin. This is, today is Thursday, February the 27th, 2025, and this is the meeting of the Westport Long-Term Building Committee. I'll call the meeting to order and ask everyone to stand for the pledge. Okay, so because we have, you have quite a few people in attendance, we're going to just begin tonight. Ms. Brown had a great suggestion that we just go around the table and make a brief introduction, and if you're representing committee, to state what committee you're appointed from. So, I'll start.
How you doing? Sean Leach, I'm a member at large, I believe.
John Perry, whatever the name of this committee is. Yeah.
Cindy Brown, I represent the Finance Committee.
Christopher Thrasher, I'm an at-large member, I'm the chair.
Evan Gendra, representing the school committee.
Manny Sauce, Planning Board.
Thea Wheeler, Planning Department.
Craig Dutra, representing the Select Board.
All right, thank you very much. So tonight, we're going to begin with just an opportunity for public comment. So if anyone from the audience has anything to bring before the committee, that would be the opportunity, or an opportunity anyway. And seeing none, we'll move on to the first item for discussion. This is we're going to be doing a presentation tonight from RGB Architects, who have been engaged in the facilities reuse study, or facilities reuse and feasibility study. I'm not sure exactly what we ended up titling it, but they've been looking at municipal buildings, including the old high school, the town hall annex, and the council on aging. There have been site visits to, I believe, all of the buildings now, correct? So, and I had a chance to attend the walkthrough of the old high school, and I know that you were just looking at the annex and the town hall and the COA last week. So, gentlemen, if you'd like to take it away, be my guest.
Thank you very much. So my name is David DeQuattro, Managing Principal of RGB Architects. To my left is Andrew Barkley. He's also Principal of RGB Architects. And to my right behind me is Monica Hanley. She's our Business Development Executive for RGB. So tonight we have a short presentation, and we have meetings that we've put together for every month, ending into about June timeframe when the deliverables will finally be done. The idea for tonight is to kind of kick it off and go over what we've seen, some of the ideas, and to all have a discussion. And hopefully we can get out of the discussion what we know the problem is, and identify the problem and all agree on the problem. And then we can, from there, talk about different strategies to get where we need to go. Andrew has a small presentation, and then he's got some questions in the back. We did look at every one of the schools, and we looked for, how the school was, how it acted, any kind of issues we found in the schools. We'll go over those back and forth, and we'll keep it open right now since it's kind of the first meeting. And we just kind of get to know each other, get to know what issues. We did talk to a lot of gentlemen. A few of you we've met on the site, so we had great discussions about historically what had taken place, and we looked at all the prior reports that were done, quite a few for the buildings, and we reviewed all those as well. So with that, we'll turn it over to Andrew.
Well, so I just put a slide together. Thank you again for having us this evening. This is just a quick overview of the high school, which I'm sure you all are aware of, but it's an interesting building that's built in 50, I think it was 52 it was began, 57, augmented again in the later 50s, then in 77. It's a large complex, 155 plus or minus square feet, set up as a school. It has a fantastic auditorium, even for this day. It has large classrooms, has the 2 gymnasiums. It has a lot of positive things about it as a core building. The question would be is how would you envision it being reused? If there's not a need as a school anymore, is there a potential to modify it or to upgrade it? And I know you've studied that since, what, 2016, all the way up to 2023. You even had an update on just the code ramifications of reusing the building in as a different use. So that, again, sort of the positive on the school. Negatives are that we quickly saw, we have to deal with some structural re-support. If it was to maintain its total sort of capacity, we found some areas where there's some water damage, water leakage. Could have a fairly large, or reason for that could be because of just maintenance, ongoing maintenance or lack of maintenance. It's not, I mean, it really has some issues, maybe not so much with hazardous materials, but has limitations in terms of its plumbing, and it's what we call infrastructure, so mechanical, electrical, and heating and cooling conditions. So again, I think you all are aware of those conditions. They're pretty well covered in the studies that you've done. It seems to be the building that's been studied quite the most, looking at the space use in comparison of the annex building, the town hall building, which we're in tonight, and also the Center on the Aging. So if you took those, say, 25 to 30,000 square feet of town buildings and were to input them into just a section of this building, you'd still be in 100,000 plus square foot overture of space. So what would you do with that if you were to keep the building? That's kind of one of the questions that immediately comes to mind. So that's kind of a quick overview of the.
If I could add one thing to the high school, we did notice there was a lot of water coming in underneath. We initially thought it was the slab, water coming up from underneath the slab. The tiles in the lower level were coming out. We went to the back mechanical room, and we were told that on rainy days you could accumulate to 3 inches of water. So it got our attention. One of the things we do as an office is we do forensic architecture, which you go into an old building and try to find out either how it's leaking, why it's leaking. And one of the things we noticed, the obvious thing, is the catch basins. There's 2 catch basins in the courtyard. And typically a catch basin will have a ladder if it's deep enough. If a catch basin's only a couple feet deep, it'll just be a hole, a dry well with 2 drains out or 1 drains out that leads to either a dry well or some kind of septic area. This one had an actual ladder, which means it exceeded 6 feet in depth. But we could only stick a measurement down there about 2 feet, 2.5 feet. The rest was covered with debris, leaves from God knows how many years. So your pipes that would go on the bottom of that would carry out natural water are clogged. So the water's going where it needs to go, and it usually goes to its less pressure. So we believe basic maintenance should pretty much fix the water increments into that building. Now, there's other issues with how is the water getting in the walls. Are there cracks in the walls? This building probably was not built with water stops and bentonite and all that stuff because it didn't have, or didn't appear to have, any kind of water table issues. But that would need more due diligence to find out if it was in fact water table. We do and have identified those catch basins as a major problem of where water is going there and it can't go anywhere else. So the school right now is pumping out the water, putting it back in the catch basin. So it's a loop that's happening. And that's why it's, until the water settles down, the water will eventually settle down through all the muck that's accumulated and go out those pipes, whatever's left. So a quick camera study, you put a camera down those pipes, you find out where it's clogged, you get down there, and fortunately, I don't think you can get access with a backhoe, but you get down there with a shovel, and you dig it out, manual labor, you can find that out. That's the fast stuff if you want to alleviate that one, I'm sorry.
Yeah, no. I mean, every building you have is, especially this, because of how large it is and its age, the more you pick at something, the further it goes. So it's the question of how far you want to go to find out where it has some issues to address. So that was, again, I think it's a fantastic building, but it's a large building, needs some repair, a lot of repair. What will it cost to turn it into something that's useful for Westport, right? So,
Mr. Chair, I got a question.
Yeah.
How about the roof? Did you guys take a look at the roof?
We went on the lower roof,
yeah.
and it was in great condition. That was the one that just had been done, I believe. We did not go into the top roof.
No.
But I didn't see any signs on the lower roof of any kind of damage. A lot of times if you have damage on the top roof, you'll have water that comes over the edge and stains the bricks. We didn't notice that. I'm sure there is, if it's an older roof, I'm sure it needs to be maintained. Drains need to be cleaned, maybe even a new roof on top of that. We wouldn't go into that kind of dive until we can kind of focus, if this is the building we want to go and develop. If the whole committee decides this is where we want to go, then we do a, fresh look at that building.
I appreciate the catch basin situation, because we just had the similar situation with the septic at this building.
Yeah.
So it wasn't maintained, overflowed. They got into the D-box, the roots had got into the D-box. Leaching field's perfect, but just because of lack of maintenance.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We had a backup. But I think we can, by probably next week, we could probably get that catch basin cleaned out and send some cameras down there and see what's going on.
That's fantastic. And then
Save our asset.
the pipes will probably be clogged, so if you can get a camera down there.
Yeah.
Because they're old clay pipes, so if the trees or roots went down there, that could be another issue.
Yep.
Right?
In the
Just plaguing
courtyard,
that.
the inner courtyard
Yeah.
had some ponding, and we've had snow and cold winter and
Right.
get it, but thawed out this week.
Yeah.
But again, it's something that brought up, I don't know if it's Chris or Evan mentioned, we have well water, right? We have well water, we have septic that accounted for the school, but, and I think it was in decent shape. I don't know that, offhand, but again, the conditions of the existing infrastructure are really gonna have an impact on how you might use this.
I think Sean could give us some input on the septic.
The septic system is in pretty good shape.
Yeah.
There is a tight tank that services the south part of the building, the upper part, which where the chemistry classes, the chemistry labs, so that's all, and that's fairly new.
Okay.
Septic system fairly new, and all the public water supplies are approved and grandfathered at this point, although there's not a lot of yield in the well.
There's not a lot of yield.
Not a lot.
Okay. That's,
Next question for Jim. Does the town have the schools and all these roofs inspected every couple of years?
No. I'm not sure about the schools. We just put a new roof on the annex. It's probably about 7 or 8 years old. This roof was done, I want to say maybe 15 years ago. It was upgraded, so these are fairly new. We just put a new roof on the garage out back. Those are pretty much our buildings, and I say no, they have been by default, I guess. Council on Aging is a relatively new roof as well, so these buildings are all fairly new. I'm not sure what the school's been doing.
Council on Aging, do you have a problem with a leak over there too, since the new roof?
There was a leak with at the chimney, or the elevator shaft. and
The
that's
flange,
been- That's
yeah.
been addressed from what I understand.
I did have one question. You mentioned a couple of instances where there would be a need for some structural resupport. Was that specific sections or?
no, what I was picking that up was from O'Day Engineering, the report, the assessment and evaluation that they did. So I was just looking at that sort of the history tells us about the building, right?
So the new codes, we're in now what they call a zone 2 for earthquake.
Yeah.
Where traditionally we're in a zone 1. We never had earthquakes, and up until, I think we just experienced another tremor about 2 weeks ago. So now we're in a zone 2, and a zone 2 means that the building code changes and you have to have certain things that comply with new buildings. This is an existing building. So O'Day was referring to top of the walls have to be treated where they get attached to the deck. There's no signs of a moment frame. A moment frame is a frame that can withstand lateral and vertical movement of an earthquake. So earthquakes move like a wave. There's none of that because that building was not designed in the 50s for any kind of lateral movement because it wasn't zoned that way. That's not to say the building's going to fall down. It's a pretty sturdy building. It's a block brick building. It's one of the strongest type of structures you can have. We saw no cracks, no horizontal cracks, no diagonal cracks. We saw a little bit of wear in the brick. The brick was in great conditions all the way through. The wood was rotted. The windows needed to be replaced. The unit ventilators were pretty shot. There's a pneumatic system in there that controls the heating in the building, and the old pneumatics was based on air and a compressor. And when you hit the valve and you turn the valve a certain way, it would open up the compressor. It would cause the valve to open and give a signal to the heat. Over time, that plastic gets old, creates a crack, gets a hole in it, and then it doesn't work anymore. So the new systems are more digital systems. That would have to be totally replaced. So that's a big cost. Other than that, we looked at the major, you see up on one of the images, the auditorium. The other major image was the gymnasium and the library. Were 3 large function areas. And we'll get back to that in a second when we look at the other 3 buildings, to find out how do the other 3 buildings look and how do they fit into this, potentially this building, if that's one of your options. You know, we heard maybe you put an addition to the senior center, maybe you sell the senior center, maybe you put additions to the town hall, sell the town hall, the annex, we can go into all that. But if you could just remember those 3 major spaces, which is the library, the gymnasium, and the auditorium, 3 large functional spaces. We can get back to that in a second. Go on to the next one?
Yeah, so, again, this is surface what we see initially, and we're gonna go further into it, but just wanna give you an overview of what we're seeing, but, I don't know if it's showing up, Rob, the Center on Aging, which was an old school, right, and been converted, and there's been some money and effort spent.
That image over there so you can get the bottom.
Yeah, I don't know if you can see it, or, I don't know why it's doing what it's doing, but anyways. Interesting building. Your clientele like it. They're very vocal. They use it. They don't want to lose it, but they also don't think they're aware of what other options there may be. So again, it's, and I'm like this too, the older I get, the less I want to change. So you get something nice, you get used to it and comfortable with it. You know, there's been some upkeep here, there's been some money spent, there's a digital cafe. The kitchen has received some upgrades. They have a multi-function space where they can do exercises as well as have, you know, coffee and tea service and play games. So it does do a decent job on the first floor to, I think, access the needs of people a bit older. And the bathrooms have received some upgrades as well. So it's kind of an old structure that's been adapted over time. The stairs are a little bit iffy. The second level is a little difficult too. You can really only access it if you're mobilely impaired by use of the elevator. You know, so again, there's some spaces, there's some renovation, there's some services offered there that are really great and don't see that they should go away. But also, when I take a first guess at this, I would say there's nothing here that couldn't move to another building as well and be provided, and also be at ground level and not have a separation of multiple floors. So that's kind of a,
One thing I picked up, oh, go ahead.
To the chair. Sean, could you elaborate on the septic and the well on the
Well,
annex?
the septic and the well, I don't know about the well. The septic is fairly new, and there's a fairly new parking area, and they put a lot of money into the building itself.
yeah,
There are a lot of benefactors who, thank God, they've stepped up over the years to keep this thing rolling.
yeah,
The problem, again, is they like that location, they like that particular place.
Yeah.
It's the town motto, I have to keep repeating it, town motto is change is only good from a vending machine. So,
well, that's true, that,
and,
yeah,
and, you know, that's probably why you get comfortable.
yeah,
They do, I think they do need a lot more space.
Some of the other things we found in the building, Andrew mentioned the wood steps were needed some maintenance. No one used them, the door was locked anyway.
the front, but the side becomes their,
We talked to some people, they were apprehensive on using the elevator, they were afraid of going on the lower level. The lower level was totally compartmentalized with a pool table in the middle. We asked how many times, and they do occasionally, I guess, go down there every once in a while and use the pool table. Their hours only go until about 4 o'clock in the afternoon, then the building's empty at that point. So that's a key thing, is when do you use that building?
Yeah.
When is that, parochial time where it's used every day? Then when the kitchen had, they were expecting a new oven and a new refrigerator were coming in that week. I think it's coming in.
this week.
They were very happy that they had meals. The people that we interviewed were very happy that they were giving such services. I think it was voted the third most or one of the top in Massachusetts for the programs
Yeah.
to help the seniors with some of their issues, whether that be mobility or if that be mind and memory. So the function of the space, they said, worked relatively well, except when they had exercise class and they used the petition to petition them off. Then there was a fight for the space.
Yeah.
So, we give it a C as far as the use. It's usable, but it's not really the best that it could be.
The director of the Council on Aging met with the select board this week, as a matter of fact, and they have to switch off their supportive day program could only be used Monday, Wednesday, and Friday because they have their exercise classes on Tuesdays and Thursdays. You're absolutely right. They do great programming. They're limited in what the numbers of people they can serve
Yeah.
and how many programs they can do simultaneously. So space, although they do a fantastic job, space is certainly an issue.
Right.
But I think one of the other factors that many people that use the building are concerned about moving to the new, if they were to move to the new space, is parking that's close to the building. Right now, they have, as you can see, they can park relatively close to the building and get inside. The way the current parking is set up at the old high school, it's quite a distance away.
Right.
The closest parking lot is quite a distance away from any indoor structure. So that would have to be addressed
Of
as
course,
a
yeah.
major source for certainly the Council on Aging if they were to utilize. The kitchen at the old high school, I know you addressed the auditorium and the gymnasium and the library. I think the kitchen and the cafeteria space there, which is adjacent to the auditorium, and you probably
Yeah.
treat that as one
Yeah.
parcel, is also very useful. I mean, the old kitchen is larger than the kitchen at the new high school.
Right.
And very functional. So I think the Council on Aging, as well as other groups, would have good use of that space and could serve a lot more of the population than they can right now in the limited capacity that they
Right.
have. So I'm sure you would address all of those things, but for
No,
purposes of
you're
just
exactly right.
expanding
Yeah.
that.
Well, traditionally, the old high schools were always, they made hot lunches. Now it's all about warming. You buy it somewhere else, they warm it up. It's just more efficient, more cost efficient, and you can
Right.
get a hotter
Sure.
meal to them, so.
Sure. Yes, I'm done. Thank you.
A couple years ago, I went over at the request of the director, because I'm an architect, supposedly I know more. And met with her and a couple of people. And we talked about, in broad terms, the generality. And at that time, there was a lot of discussion, even then, about moving to the new high school. So I threw out on the table, I said, listen, I don't know any of the numbers here, except I can tell you it would be a hell of a lot cheaper to build an addition to this building than to try and take all of this and fit it into the high school and retrofit the high school and all of that. I said, I don't know what the feasibility of it is. I know there's a septic and wells back there. However, is that something you even thought about and looked at?
You know, we did, we understood, and you talked about that
Yeah.
before, John, we would look at that, and whenever you upgrade a building, you have to upgrade other things, like the fire alarm, you have to upgrade it, accessibility. There's a lot of things you're getting away with on that building, because it's a dated building, so once you start
You're
opening
gonna run
up-
into those in the high school.
We are.
You will, but in a macro level where you can petition it, and we'll look at both items. We'll look at both the cost benefit of putting an addition and isolating those services to that one building, or combine it to another building, or maybe do a little bit of both. Okay?
Yeah.
I think, Sean, wasn't that parking area all redone and kind of maxed out?
Yeah, I think did PAR design that, Jim, do you remember?
Not sure about the parking, but I know the public water supply is in the back in the woods there, and that limits what you can do in the back area, and there's a
Right.
septic system on the east side to the right of the building that kind of limits, at least at this point.
He's got a 165-foot zone one, I believe, on that well, which is significant, 330-foot diameter circle, basically.
Yeah.
But I know that was a concern when they redid that parking, the new parking.
They couldn't go any further.
Yeah, exactly.
When you look at a senior center, for example, you look at programmatically how that program's set up. That building is programmatically, you're in an old school. So in an old school, you've got not a long type of bearing structure, so the spaces are relatively small, except for that one big area in front. But then programmatically, how do you work? How do you function? Once you split into two levels, when you have a generation, that mobility isn't the easiest anymore, or not as, like when you were 20. You would try to put that all on the same level. You'd maximize the ability to use that space more for the actual end user than limiting the space, because you can't get down there frequently. If there's a number of them, and I didn't get the age group from anywhere from, I think they admitted them from 50 all the way up to 150. And that's quite a range of people that would potentially go in that space, and how do they use that space. So you want to programmatically look for single-level space, wide open spaces that could be petitioned off, and they can have various things to do based on not only their age, but their mobility. and the diagnostics of, how they function overall. So that's one of the things you look and you factor into, in addition to putting an addition on and solving the immediate problem.
They mentioned parking, like John, you just said. They mentioned sound and transfer of sound, so that some areas will be quiet, another area that's active, and when they're exercising in one section, there's not enough space, no separation. So there's what they call the library, which is really sort of the front entry room, which isn't particularly a library, but they call it that. So again, there's opportunities to, say, redefine what they might be, but to make a significant addition to this, that would be, I mean, yes, it can be done. Anything can be done in terms of a structural adaptation. You may have site limits, that's gonna be, in water. I think one of the things that I picked up on the high school as well, and is that you're all on well here, right? Westport has the well system and you have septic. There's no sewer, no water, so that is sometimes, well, that's gonna be something you'd have to address for anything we do. Compartmentalizing or, yeah.
I mean, an expansion of use would trigger a lot of possibly permitting values on the public water supply.
Yeah.
With new contaminant thresholds and things along that line. So that would be a concern. I don't know what the limit is for the well at the Council on Aging.
And I don't know if you all had a chance to speak with Beverly Bish, the director over there. She does a great job, especially securing grant funding for a lot of the programs.
Yeah.
But I've talked with her before about the projections of the population of Westport and just how many seniors that the Council on Aging expects to serve in the next, 5 to 10 years, and very,
Yeah.
very dramatic uptick. So that has to be considered too, because it's already kind of bursting at the seams, so, would an addition with the limitations considered, would
I mean, if you look around the
that
table,
even fit?
you'll see the increase in the aging of the population.
Sorry, Mr. Dutry?
I was gonna say that
Couple
because
of
the demographics are going up, but the parking spaces are limited. And unless you can give additional parking, it's gonna be hard to expand programming at that site. Because you're already having programs, and you understated it, because actually there are exercise costs more days. In some cases, you have the meals program bumping up against the exercise programs.
Yeah.
And you have, and that so-called waiting area is also an office. I mean, so these dual-purpose areas are incompatible uses. But the biggest, I think, hangup is parking. Unless you can expand the parking, it's gonna be hard to expand program. As a participant in one of those programs for a while, yes, I'm over 60. When you're between programs, the changing of the guard, and one is coming in and the other is coming up, that parking lot is near capacity. So,
Would shuttle services be something that can be considered if going to the whole high school?
I'm sorry, was that a question?
The shuttling services?
We actually
yeah.
toured with Bill, who's one of the bus drivers, who does bring, patrons back and forth because of limitations of either ability or just because they're further away or because of parking if there's no. So, I know they have that service. I don't know how long it goes per day in terms of time, but they have rotating drivers, so that's,
Right.
it's a positive, so.
I would say this in a program, and I think it's an exciting program that has a lot of potential to grow.
Yeah,
Right now, it's basically
Confined.
serving its purpose for just what it has, but you could grow that a little bit more where you don't look at it as somewhere that a person would have to go because they can't be mobile. You could look at it opportunities for learning and educating from the age of 50 and up. 50 is what used to be 40, so they're still very, very active. You could have a gym inside a space like that. Video has come so far.
Dancing.
You could have dancing,
yeah.
a movie theater. And you could bring a lot of the culture from around the area into that. And one of the things Bill told us is that there's people outside of Westport that visit it quite often. So you got to look at it as an opportunity. And again, you look at the function, you look at the program, and how does that program then fit into other spaces? And can it make a multiple use out of that, an overall cost?
I think that particular lot, that facility is that build out other than going up for a second floor. I don't think you can do much of anything with expansion to this facility. I really think they're limited. I think they looked at that, maybe 6 or 7 years ago, when they were doing the parking.
I think when I spoke with Beverly, though, even if they moved to the high school, they would still like to have certain programs at that.
Well, I don't think you give up the building, but I think, they could have other programs, on other days.
People with more need or something.
Maybe becomes a function hall,
Next slide.
Yeah, sure.
We'll go through these and we'll kind of summation,
Well,
go
then, yeah.
back to what we're, some of the things collectively as we put them together.
So the town hall annex has that really cool gymnasium in the back that is used by what, kindergarten program? That's about it right now,
In
right?
recreation program.
Right.
No?
No.
All right. So,
If I can just state, we use it every single day.
all right.
The preschool that's there uses it every day in the morning. We have play and learn parent talk groups that happen 3 times a week. We have afternoon programs. We have gym rentals almost every day, every weekend. It's used all the time.
It's a beautiful
Cool.
space.
Yeah.
Really is great. Those old fir floors, very
Right.
beautiful.
It used to be the high school.
That used to be the high school.
Right.
And so,
Pre-52.
Yeah.
I wasn't here, but.
oh, yeah. So,
We get our money's worth out of the buildings, as you can see.
yeah. So I found that old photo of it. It's, in many ways, it still has exact, similar form, right? It's been
Exactly.
added on to,
Right.
but,
Exactly.
it's in a very similar condition as
Well,
the school.
Yeah, what we found in that building, other than the gym, they're very small spaces.
Yeah.
And it's very inefficient use of space. We have a central corridor, which typically will lend you to an efficient space, but the central corridor is extremely wide.
Yeah.
So, and it was conducive to a school. So it matches a school in its form and its shape, so that's what it was a school. But now you're trying to retro it into an office. So what we found is that we were putting people in these office spaces that weren't really fitted out, as you can see the bottom right.
Yeah, this-
Someone was tucked into a corner with some file cabinets to divide them. They had air conditioners that would plug into the windows. They had doors and door hardwares that didn't function correctly. It was definitely a retro space. Let's stick them in here. They can use this space. We own this building. Let's use that. So it's not the most economic and efficient use of a space for that function. In fact, what we found was that you could probably take those functions and combine them. There's got to be an inefficiency with what you have in the town hall and the town annex, having 2 different buildings, and if you put them together, you'd have a lot more efficient set of practices with probably a lower overhead overall. So although it was a great building and it's a great fabulous gym, it's very much stuck in where it was when it was built for its use. In
It has a huge water problem too.
floor or just ground table?
Supply.
Oh, water
Supply.
supply, all right.
Okay.
I didn't know that.
Sure, can you elaborate on that a little bit?
Well, the well's collapsed, I don't know how many times in the last 20 years. Seems like on a yearly basis, new wells, new something. It's got, for whatever reason, the well keeps collapsing and whatnot, but
And there were 2 issues last year, right? Was it 2?
Yeah, so I think it's on its 3rd well overall, right? The old well is right next to the building. We used the one about 30, 40 feet away from the building for a number of years. That collapsed last year. We put a new well in, but the well driller said that he would consider this well temporary. He said it could last a year, it could last 15 years. He said he didn't.
That's, the current well is considered temporary? Okay.
Yeah, but now that building, Sean, isn't it, I mean, that's a pre-existing non-conforming, the well doesn't meet the cone of influence. I mean, can you drill a new well like that?
you could probably drill a well way in the back and supply. I think it's been a convenience thing where we're just kind of moving it further away from the building. I don't know how far back.
If we were to expand the use, we would have to meet the new requirements. What they allowed us to do, because it was emergency situation, was put the well pretty much right next to the other well, which is,
So we'd need a 500-foot cone of influence if we were gonna expand on it.
Depending on the zone.
overall,
Yeah,
yeah,
But
circle.
there is area out back,
That the town owns, or?
Basketball court, you know.
Yeah, it goes back pretty
beyond.
far.
Yeah, okay, okay.
But it's a ways away from the building.
And then you really don't, even so, what would its capacity be, right? What would it supply? So,
I don't know if the amount of the
Yeah.
problem, I think it's just the wells just have the problem. I don't know why it would keep collapsing, I'm not understanding. I don't know if there's a good reason for it, but,
They find out how many feet of casing they drove, or maybe not put enough casing in?
They did, he put additional casing this time to
but they still don't think
protect
it's
it, but
gonna
he's
last.
still, after, once they did the pump out, the 48-hour test, they observed additional, more sand in the well, and
Yeah.
they weren't sure why.
Which
it-
bodes well for the septic, but not so much for the well. But I don't know what, if you move this way back, whether it be the same thing or better or worse.
It's a difficult space for the employees
Yeah,
there.
yeah.
I mean, to be an employee in that building is challenging.
yeah.
No,
I don't know if you're gonna go to work every day.
Exactly.
I mean, efficiency too. I think we shouldn't have an annex if we got a space big enough. I mean, we got a building inspector that's filling in for Ralph, came in, and that was one of his things that he said, you know, it's having a different set of eyes on how more efficient we'd be if we were in one more building, and
Yeah.
everybody was together.
You're paying for a space that's this big by utilizing this much space.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's a,
Except for the gym.
It's
Except
like,
for the
it's like the other building, though, they're attached to it because it was the Earl School, and
right?
I'm not saying that we,
Well, and we mentioned, this lady behind me mentioned great things about the gym, is because it's a big open space, multi-purpose, multi-use,
Right.
same thing.
and that's kind of one of our things, we're really short on gym space,
Yeah,
and kind of one of the reasons why most of the residents in town don't want to lose the old high school, too.
sure.
So, I mean, we don't want to give up any of those spaces, the kids need them, it's,
Because in the high school, what's called the library was actually a gymnasium,
At one
right?
point, yes.
Right, so you had the small gym, then the new gym, and then you had the auditorium. Those are large spaces. They're expensive to build new, right? That's the thing. You have it, how do you use it effectively? And, I'm sorry, I'm jumping back. Is there, because Dia would need some water when she's in this building. Is the water shut off to the building, or like, is it a,
No, there's water there, but same with this building, we have
They're not
potable
potable.
water. Yeah,
Just
we
potable
have deliverable.
Okay.
Yes, I wouldn't necessarily drink the water over there.
okay, I was just,
that water's been tested, right?
Yeah, it has been tested, it's treated. Yeah, we have a small filtration system over there. Yeah, it's-
so.
This building.
And then the next is right next door, so where we are right now. So again, cool, beautiful structure, had some service. It was initially designed, load-bearing, it was set up as office spaces, right? It's a town hall. It's really tough to think of how it might be used in another way if that was an option. It's, it's office cell structure for its day and its time, that was the method for compartmentalizing, but now, is that really efficient? I don't know, I think we had one person in every, maybe two people in every, space, but, so. Sorry? Got it, yeah.
Yeah.
You'd have to restructure it, right,
Offices, medical offices,
yeah,
could be housing,
could be,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah,
So they're different,
repurposing is definitely some value in repurposing. It has
Yeah.
2 egress stairs on either side, and it has an elevator.
right,
Has an abundance of safes that are just used for, just storage of old paper, right?
Yeah.
File storages that could be condensed, and it could be down in the basement if you really had to do that,
This
somewhere
room
else.
was at one time the public library. This room.
Ah.
Yes.
really? This wall?
This room
This
here.
space, okay,
Yes, just
okay, I'm
this
like-
room,
I
yep.
need to say before that it was the police station.
Oh, yeah, the police station was downstairs.
Okay.
Sure.
That makes sense, and then again, it's evolved over time, right? And it's somewhat limited to whatever function, like, as an office space now, I think it's somewhat timed out. But John, you're correct, it could be, you could be modified. It could be sold, it could be compartmentalized.
That's what you guys have been modified.
We have.
We have.
and-
We've done them 2 ways. This reminds me of Kendall Dean in North Smithfield, built around the same area. They actually modified that to be a bigger town hall. So they put an addition on the back where the town council meets. They made some play fields in the backyard. So they modified a building like this in the 30s that was pre-Second World War, or maybe a little bit post-Second World
Yeah.
War, right around the 30s and the 40s. And it was done, and they have the same setup where they have old classrooms that are turned into office spaces. It's not the most efficient use of space. They have older windows, the electrical lines inside the walls and the ceilings are dated, so you need more outlets. The HVAC system is generally controlled by 1 or 2 thermostats, so some people are hot, some people are cold. They're forced to bring in little heaters. They increase the amperage, but the circuit board's not used for that. It's a fire hazard. The central boiler system is a central boiler system instead of a more efficient system that looks around the entire building. The fresh air intake's not functioning right now, so it just takes fresh air in as much as it gets. So if it's 0 degrees, then you're fighting that 0-degree day on the space that's above you, rather than controlling it by mechanical. And that's nothing that's out of the ordinary. Even the high school didn't have a functioning damper system on it. It just had open vents, so.
I believe, Jim, we have a grant to redo the HVA system here?
We do right now, we have a grant we're working on, we've been awarded the grant to replace the heating system for a new HVAC system.
Good.
Still working on the pricing's going up
Yes.
every couple of months, so we're hoping that the grant will still cover the cost.
Are we gonna be able to stay in this building where that happens?
They're looking at that right now.
Well, should you do that if you're not gonna stay?
Yeah, that's another, well,
Well, I think for the building, you know, moving forward, if you got a grant, unless you can't transfer the grant over, but my concern with that was I believe they encapsulated the asbestos in here, so I don't know if it would be an option to install a whole new heat and air conditioning.
So we just had that tested for the asbestos, and they're doing a report now, so we'll know in a week or two.
And you're proposing split systems, right?
Yes.
So a split system gives you a little bit more efficiency, but it doesn't give you natural air. It just pumps in cold or hot. Gives you the benefit of having air conditioning in every space, so you can control and modulate depending on creature comfort, but it doesn't have that natural fresh air intake. The old days, when they did these buildings, they had single pane windows, so if you go up to a single pane window, when it's really cold, you can actually feel the air coming in. There's your fresh air, and that's how the engineers did it back in the day. So once you put a tighter window, you need to get some fresh air inside. That's makeup units, that's sometimes ductwork, or multiple units. That adds cost. If you're keeping these windows here now, that's a great solution, split system for now. But you want to keep the fresh air coming into a building, so the carbon dioxide levels don't go up. You don't get tired around 2 o'clock. No, it isn't because you had a big lunch. It's because the oxygen level goes down in the space and you get a little bit more tired. So those are some of the things you'd have to look at the building if you had to retro it. If you had to use it to another use, like John suggested, maybe be a condo use or an apartment use, they would have to do similar things. They could put fresh air intakes in the annex.
I take the opposite tack on it, because periodically I sit down and have coffee with guys, and everybody I talk to says, this is where the town hall ought to be because it's the center of town.
yeah.
Now, it isn't really where
It's
the
not the
center of
center of
people are.
Right.
More people live right there. But the banks are here, the doctors are here, the gas station's here. So that's gotta go into the equation. Does it absolutely preclude moving it someplace? I don't think so, but I think it's a consideration.
I had a conversation with a local developer who redoes buildings, basically takes municipal buildings, turns them into condos and whatnot. And he said, in his opinion, I'm not necessarily mine, the town would get financially better off by selling these two and keeping the high school and renovating that, because the developer that would buy the high school would pay a lot less money than he would for these two buildings,
Per square foot.
Per square, yeah,
per
yeah,
square foot. Yep.
yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, perhaps.
And the bones of the high school would cost us a lot more to build.
Yeah,
But a developer wouldn't pay much for high school, because the money that would have to go in to make it usable would be a lot more
Yeah.
per square foot than it would this building or the annex would be.
What's your opinion on putting housing in there? What are the holdbacks of that?
What type of housing?
Well, I'm a fan of moving all the municipal buildings, and that's what I'm hearing from the people, but we do have a group that's looking to put affordable housing in that.
The problem is upgrading that to be for affordable housing. I mean, yeah, you could do mini splits you make every classroom a unit, I guess, and mini splits and all these other things. But the price to do that for a developer, you end up selling the high school for, $100,000.
what about the septic and water?
That's the
That's a
whole-
different issue.
Yeah.
You know, again, that would all be factored into what they could do. to
Right,
develop.
bathrooms in every unit, right?
Historically, there's a lot of fill there, it's not even,
So it's also changing the use,
Right.
and that triggers the building code.
Yeah.
And so that has been the biggest argument against, you know, right now with that building is a combination, is mostly an educational use, but also is a use for municipal office space because the school administration has been there. So but if you were to repurpose it into housing, it would trigger a bill,
Yeah, any change. of
any
use.
change of functional, basic use.
What type of fill did they put in there? I heard that.
Sean has it better. The filled-in area at the old high school,
Is it-
like
is
for
it-
perk tests or so forth, why they moved the septic way out back.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's really crappy land, all that land back there. It's very wet, most of that's filled with wetlands, actually. If you walk past the baseball field, you'll see what you're dealing with. You walk south of there, the parking lot south of the building, you see what you're dealing with. It's basically rocks and wetlands.
What about where the building is? Anyone remember if there's any fill?
Used to be a pig farm
Pig farm.
up front and town bought it, and most of it's filled in the back, like most of where the fields are mostly filled.
So, but not the actual structure that's sit on it?
No,
But we also have some new fields behind that.
Yeah.
Softball, and, you know, tying like a cross-country track through there, and I mean, the place is used in the summertime, like, you know, like how we saying the kids are using the annex, you know, the older kids are all summer long, that's where they are.
Yeah.
I don't know where they're gonna go if we lose that building, you know?
Well, I
Well,
think-
even with the schools today, the current high school uses those ball fields.
They do.
They do not have, sufficient ball fields of their own. So if we were to lose that space, the outdoor space, the town would be in a position where we would be looking for other land to be able to build more fields. So it's, you get nothing for that lot because of the structure that's on it, and to remove the structure is very costly. And then now you still have to go and find space for the fields, new fields. So it's a catch-22 every time. Every time you look at a solution, you find that it's going to create a different problem, so.
Yeah, yeah.
And I don't know whether it won't be for future use for school because of capacity limits or whatever.
Right.
But that location, traffic-wise, is one of the best locations.
Yeah.
You get right off 88, you come 177 right to it, it's an easy location to get to and from without running through every residential community in the town, as opposed to the new high school, which if you go on there
Yeah.
after 7 o'clock in the morning,
Which would be good for expanded ambulance service. I mean, you got a nice garage in there, you could put a couple more ambulances in there, and as we get older, we're gonna need more ambulances.
Is that the location of the high school is the center of the town, right? Geographically, the center of the town?
we're a geographic center, but that's the population center.
That's closer to the, yeah.
Okay, population center, for the foreseeable future,
Yeah.
okay.
So we did an internal review of this whole process in our office. And
We
brought
have
ev-
wine in the, it's a Friday, we have
Yeah.
wine and cheese. They come up with great ideas.
Yeah, we have, well, supposedly wine and cheese, we call it design and wine on Friday afternoon. I don't drink, but, I brought
Andrew
this
has
up.
whiskey at his bed.
Yeah, but I brought it up and asked I don't know how many, 15 of us in there, and just showed them and described the process and said, what do you all think? What do you think? And these are people from 23 to however old I am. So, everyone had a different take on it, and they're like, some of the takeaways were, there's a physical, it's called longplex. They're like, if there was some type of a physical activity component to that high school, people would come from Fall River, they'd come from Dartmouth. There'd be a need for something like this in the community that would be really great. Another comment was,
Revenue enhancing?
revenue enhancing. They said, what about medical? Is there an urgent care nearby? Is there something or a support, we call it Thunder Miss, where we've done these little fit outs in high schools for students who need psychological, social, and even medical care. which is an outside vendor, but using an older space within a high school. That's an option that's kind of interesting. So they were bringing up a lot of different things. They said, well, what about elder? Is it going to be elderly housing or assisted living? And I see that in some of the studies. There's been different options, but one of the comments was that it's great access, that you can come from Dartmouth, you can come from Fall River, you can come from the farms in Westport, you can come from the beach, and it's easy to get to, and it's recognizable. So they thought that was a real good benefit.
But the farmer's market. idea.
Yeah, so one of the guys that works with us, his mother and father-in-law live in Westport and live on the, I guess he said, on the other side. They have a small farm. And he said they would love to have a farmer's market. So if there was space that, at the high school, that you could come and have an outdoor farmer's market or indoor outdoor farmer's market, that would be he said the farmers would love it. It'd be a fantastic opportunity to come and use some space, if there's a space that's allocated for that use. Who runs that? Who manages it? If it's a profit center, I don't know how that works, but it was an interesting idea. And
We do currently run a farmer's market through one of our local councils here, and sometimes it's runs indoors during the winter months for a abbreviated period of time, but every Saturday, and it does get a very good crowd. There's
Yeah.
limited space. You know, it's on concrete over at the annex, as a matter of
Okay.
fact, is where they run it, but not centrally located to the population
Yeah.
center. But certainly, so, you know, people come and do all of their errands here, you know, maybe on a Saturday morning. But it is very popular, and I
Yeah.
think that you would have, I think the vendor participation is limited.
Yeah,
Maybe that's due to space. I don't know that end of it as to why there's limited. You go to other communities, they have much larger group of vendors that show there.
yeah.
Ours is a little bit smaller, but successful nonetheless. So I think that could certainly be enhanced, you know, with, you know, we have music in the morning, and it is a draw, and I think that it would be great if we could expand it and enhance it to some degree.
So the four biggest areas that we talked about, that Andrew just elaborated on, were all revenue-enhancing ideas, right? Revenues that were a public-private type partnership, that you can bring something in and utilize some of maybe the extra space that you have in that building, in that site, and that would draw from other communities and bring it in, and that would feed itself.
I think the biggest impediment for a farmer's market expansion in that current space is parking.
Parking, right. That's right, you're right.
And display area. So you're limited. I mean, if you were to get really expansive and start expanding the type of products, looking at food trucks perhaps,
Right, exactly,
getting regional farmers market, then you may need a much larger space
right.
Yeah.
than the
Right.
one we have. One we
Right.
have now is sort of a boutique, you know, a couple of farmers locally. It's great during the summer. I think it barely staggers along. I think the music is more the draw in the winter
Right.
than the actual products.
Right,
Summer's the other way around.
yeah, yeah.
No, and even like recreation, when they have those outdoor events and the bands, I mean, you go there and it's packed. And you know there's a lot of people that aren't going just because they know how packed it is.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it could expand on that too.
That was one of the comments, is larger. If there's a larger space, more would participate. I
Right.
was like, okay, I didn't know that even, you know. That's coming from someone who's here, you know, that sees that, so.
So as we develop in these next couple of months, we look at these things and we develop things like, if you did have that type of use, how would it affect parking? What would it look like on a site plan? What would this space look like? What would the other spaces look like? And then we would go into, maybe go to the next slide now.
Yeah.
Maybe then you'd go into, what does it cost to maintain? What does it cost to take down? If the idea is to take the high school down and use it for a new town hall, a new senior center, what does it cost to take that building down now? So we know that new construction of that similar construction type are up to like $800 a foot when you put all the systems inside of it. Where if you maintain that building and did something to renovate it, you could spend $300 to $400 a foot. And that would be a total gut renovation job, because your structure is still there. The most expensive part of that building is still there. So we will look at different various ideas and cost models that'll drive us one way. But these are some of the questions that, Andrew put together. First one I looked at is identify the problem.
You know, I mean, we've talked about the individual buildings, but I guess the major question is, what do you perceive the space need to be? When I say program is, what is the program type that you prefer to pursue? Because we've already talked about, we have senior citizens, we have need for maybe exercise and augmenting to the high school, we have the annex, we have the town hall. Again, those programs already have a certain type of condition and a space they need or can adapt to. But I don't know which way to go that seems to be the most effective. And I can't speak for Westport, right? You're the community, so.
One of the things when I look at the building and the size of it, and I'm thinking of a phased renovation.
Yes.
Occupying, it's like we have a need for the municipal offices. Say we found an area and what we needed to do to move that in, and then we could phase into, the other areas for council on aging or whatever they wanted to do, and gymnasiums and all of that stuff. I just think the space and the bones are there, and I think that would be a good use.
The biggest thing is, once you identify the problem, we all agree on a problem. And I think we can agree on the problem. In my opinion, the problem is you have multiple buildings in town that are inefficient, that are still costing you money to operate. And you're looking at a problem saying, how do I do this? How do I consolidate the use of it? How do I incorporate new standards and bring better program to that building? While at the same time, I lower my overall cost to make it more efficient. And it doesn't include just bringing the space over, you also have to fit that space out. So it's not just, we'll just take these old desks and we'll prop them up over there. You want something that's efficient, long-term, and good term. And look at this table we're working with.
We got a new one coming.
You got a new one coming. But, so you want the thing fitted out for its intended use, for its programmatic use as well. And the other thing you want to do is you want to get the excitement around the town. I understand this town has a history of not passing a lot of bonds, and it's usually the north onto the south, right? You have the younger crew and the older crew, and the older crew's ideals are different than the younger
I
crew's
don't know if I
ideals.
agree.
I don't know if that's true. I think the town steps up when it recognizes a problem.
Okay, that's good.
For capital structures,
Yeah,
right,
absolutely, yeah.
for structures.
Historically.
exclusions
I would
as
say
opposed
debt
to general
exclusions
overrides.
Versus.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Probably
so,
2.5.
so I understand there was a bond that was floated for infrastructure, connecting the water lines and to the sewer and whatnot, and that failed. So that's something that's important, because if you bring these multi-uses to this one building, you want that support. It's gonna be your first thing you're gonna have to deal with, is how do you get all this water? How do you get all this septic? How do you control that? So that's one of the costs that you bring in. But there's also benefits to that as well. Once you bring that and connect that utility, it also brings other revenue into the town, because now you have that added utility. So, go ahead.
Mr. Chair, if I could, just a question. I noticed on one of the documents that had been sent over, you talked about and this ties into what you were just saying, the cost of doing nothing.
Right.
Which I think is an important concept,
Yeah.
especially for for the town to understand, because, it's, I think, clearer to see the costs associated with doing something like moving offices or whatever it may look like, but there's also a cost associated with leaving things the way they are.
Yeah.
Which is, only, as we've seen, piled up over the years as the building's been sitting, so.
I think there's two major things to consider on that front. One is no matter what, we're looking at increased maintenance costs, doing nothing. But I think there is a bit of a misconception in the town as to just how much that building is being used now, today. I mean, there's you have rec league basketball, you have there's still there's the daycare or the out of school time. There's programming and things that happen in that building now as it is. And I think that, like I said, it's kind of like an out of sight, out of mind. If you don't necessarily go there for one of those programs, you're thinking it's just sitting there,
Yeah.
not being utilized. And again, as Ms. Brown mentioned, you take away the building and the field specifically, then that opens up a whole new problem of having to build out new fields for the school use as it is. So that's something.
Yeah, and I think there's also a misconception that people think, oh, well, you know, the town should sell the land and take that money and, you know, and reinvest it. As Sean indicated, as it stands, that building is not worth a lot of money to anyone else. We have value in it because of the fields, and if someone else were to retrofit it, how much are they truly going to pay for that piece of land? Very little, right? Very little.
On a
And-
net basis, it's gonna be less, we'd have to tear the building down.
And that cost, I mean, I think that's a number that has been floating
One time
three,
it's 2, I bet it's 3 or 4.
I was gonna say $3 or $4 million.
Yeah, you're
So
accurate.
no matter what we do, as Mr. Gendro was starting to say, no matter what we do, the cost of doing nothing is rather significant.
Right.
If the town did not want to approve an override for town expenditures, just for operating funds, I would dare to think what they would think about floating a bond issue of $4 million and you get nothing in return. All you're gonna do is get a torn down building, and that's it. There is a cost of doing nothing. And I think that's the element that,
Actually started at 4 million.
right, start at 4, you know, and then maybe, you know, with the associated costs, maybe it's $4.5, $5 million.
Another aspect of this, while we're on it, I'm gonna throw it out there, it's on my notes for later, but since we're into this. And that is, are we gonna need more school space?
I think that for the purposes of this committee and this study, I think we should put to bed the idea that that is going to be a school space going forward. I think going back to that question, just kind of, we kind of lose the plot a little bit. I just don't,
But aren't they using it for after-school programs now?
they're currently using it for some after-school programs, but
But not
that's, but it's not a classroom, it's not a
No,
instruction-based
but I'm
situation.
saying, future, it's only gonna get worse before it gets better. I think there's two things to consider here. One is, I'm not in favor of getting rid of the land.
Right, right.
The issue is the building itself. The land and the facilities around the building need to stay. The question is, concentrate on the building.
With your,
So just getting quickly with the school, right, for school use, if we use it for school purposes, that's the primary and probably only use we could use it for, right? You can't have combined uses when you have the school.
Right.
You know,
Exactly.
we can't really get into the gym on the day the council on aging can't use it because the school's there. You know, you need Corey checks and everything else. So in order to use that building for school, you would need 700-800 kids to make it worthwhile.
You can't have a combined.
And for us to increase the population that much in students, I don't see that happening anytime in the near future. I think the school would be obsolete before we reach that population.
with a new high school that you just built, I'm sure that with Mass School building, you had to do a demographic study, right?
We did do a demographic study, yeah.
And then did that show where you're going in the next 6, 8, it should go out 10 years? Did it say you're stable, growing? Do you remember?
I think it was flawed.
I think we
I
proved it
was gonna
wrong
say, I think
already.
it's fair to say there was a lot of back and forth and on,
Yeah.
We picked, because I was on the school building committee back when that decision was made, before I went on my hiatus. We picked the very conservative growth strategy,
Yeah.
and we did not anticipate certain things. We thought we were going to have zero population growth and zero school. We did not realize that the parochial school system, which people have been fleeing for years from Westport to use, would implode. And we're left really with one high school, and that the middle schools that were in adjacent communities and the elementary schools, with one or two exceptions, are all gone.
Yeah.
So we just lost that. And that, I think we've peaked in terms, there is some capacity to absorb more high school age students into the Voc Tech and even the Aggie school system, because they are expanding the capacity, but those schools still have waiting lists that are longer than any additional students that we would be sending them.
Right.
So, based on that,
Yeah.
even though Jim's point is valid, we should at least take a hard look at reuse that school. Maybe you have to break it in two, cut it in half.
Yeah, break compartmentalize, take a piece away.
That's easy to do, frankly.
What about the new high school? Do
Yeah.
they have provisions for an addition in the future, for future
Well,
growth?
there's land problems there, space. I mean, and one of the other confining issues of,
I don't have the answer, I'm just saying, as part of this thing, I think it's gotta be considered and looked at a little bit. We had the superintendent in there a couple times, I could never quite get a clear answer whether they were projecting growth or not. But we've got new things happening, we've got a train system coming down, who knows what that's gonna do to Westport.
Well, I think this gentleman's right when he says don't get rid of the land.
No.
Right.
We did North Smithfield, Rhode Island, we did a middle school, and we went and looked at 32 sites in the town, because they didn't have any sites. We ended up on the existing high school site. So land is of a premium. I would not get rid of land for that type of use. If you had to put another building on there, you have the land to do that. It strikes me odd that they built a new high school and they didn't have provisions for maybe an additional floor, no additional
They
expansion.
do have provisions for expansion.
They do,
Yes,
perfect.
How
Okay.
big that expansion is, I don't know, but I know
Okay.
that, I want to say 4 classrooms can be done on the west side.
Good, okay.
But the most important thing is to consider that land's in the exact location that we need it. So why get rid of it?
Right. So the next thing we want to look at is, and I think we've talked about this a little bit tonight, is the significance of the pieces of the buildings that we're looking at. Is there any historic or architectural significance? We talked to the gentleman, I think his name is Bill, right, from the
Yeah.
senior center, and he told us that they've all passed now, but there were some seniors that actually went to school there originally. There was some significance to them.
Or sentimental, at least, yeah.
Right, and that's always going to be a trigger point where people don't want to do things because that's the way it was, and we were great back then, and why can't we keep it the way it is? It's the old stuff, the new stuff, and like Andrew was talking about earlier, so it's change. So are there any significant pieces of these buildings that are significant value to the town? You say
Like
we
this is iconic.
absolutely cannot,
I don't think unless somebody all of a sudden becomes president or something and, I don't-
declares,
And
declares
I went to
such.
school at the annex.
Okay.
For 3rd and 4th grade. Scary, a little scary. But I don't think, I know there's probably thousands of people went through that school. I'm not sure there's a historical, I mean, it was the high school and
Yeah.
the town of Westport won the state championship in football. But, I mean, other than that, I don't know if there's any historical significance to any of the buildings for that matter. I mean, there is a sentimental value, I think, to a lot of people.
Yeah.
in which way?
Just the fact that it's iconic, the buildings are, you go through Central Village and you see the town hall, you see the annex, which used to be the Earl School, which used to be the high school,
Right.
it's sitting out on the road, and you get the playground there, and people go there, and that's just, for lack of having, Westport as, basically it's a conglomeration of villages,
Yeah.
and like having a village green, this has become the default village green.
Sure.
If I could ask Jim, is there any legal consequences regarding CPC funds that have been used on this building or at the Council on Aging?
From my understanding, there's no historic preservation restrictions that were applied
Okay.
when they use funding.
It is a CPC grant? that you-
There were a number of CPC grants for this building. I know they did the roof, and I think they may have done the windows years ago over at the annex, but the roof here, tile floors, the elevator was a grant, a few other things.
And over at the Council on Aging?
Council on Aging, I believe they do CPC funds as well.
How about any known deed restrictions?
I'm not aware of any deed restrictions.
How about any, brownfield, any environmental stuff too?
Environmental here,
Yeah. Not the annex though, also?
I'm not aware of anything at the annex.
And is
How about
this-
the council on aging?
Not aware of the Council on Aging either.
They're old enough that.
What's the environmental here?
You think we could get a list of all those areas in town?
Of what?
Like the brownfield type stuff, environmental stuff?
I imagine we can get that from DEP.
Right. Yeah,
What
you
we have
could
here
do-
is
you want
there
the
was some oil
GIS.
tanks, I believe, that leaked over at the Highway Department area. We've had test wells out here for 20, 30, 40 years.
Who's the town LSP that's doing that testing?
From the Board of Health there, what's the guy's name? It'll come to me in a minute.
I can't think of the guy's name either.
No, no. Yeah, I don't know.
It was a single gentleman in LSP who was doing the testing at the head and doing a lot of work for the town.
He does the landfill, he does this. and he does
But
that
Cumberland
also.
Farms.
And who's
there,
reviewing that,
LSP.
who's reviewing that stuff? Where's that go to, what department?
I imagine the Board of Health, I was on
Board
the
of
Board of
Health
Health,
gets
it was
copies,
being
we get
monitored.
copies.
Yeah. There was the MTBE issue with, when they pulled the tanks at Cumberland Farms and the town garage and. I don't know where it's gone.
They're reporting that stuff to the DEP all, every year like they should, right?
Yes.
Under mass contingency.
Yep,
So we should be able to get up on the DEP website and find that.
You can get on the GIS and it'll list it.
Does anyone have any other issues with these buildings they want to let us know about? Any significance, whether that be a historic, environmental, function, use?
I had a couple things, I don't know where we are on that.
No,
If there is one.
They were
It's still in this, it's still in the discussion items here.
Yeah.
The same, you know, the overall discussion, so.
My question is, I tell you what my concern is, and I'll get into it. My concern is, this committee's been meeting for how many years now? And I'm concerned that one of these days at the town meeting, people are gonna stand up and say, what have you guys been doing?
Kicking the
And,
can.
and what do you think? And as of today, we couldn't come in there and say, what do we think? Give all the minutes and whatnot. So I sort of sense we ought to put our toes to the fire here and figure out a game plan of how we're gonna get all the options out, look at them, make some decisions, and get to some recommendations in a reasonable amount of.
Well, this committee has twice recommended to the select board that they pursue renovating that high school. Twice this committee has recommended to the select board.
Well, I probably have said this every meeting, and I'll say it again. The thing that I am most excited about, the way you all are approaching this, is that I think this is the first real in-depth study that's been done that's actually gonna show a cost-benefit analysis. We're gonna
Correct.
look at, you know, what is the
Correct.
cost of doing nothing? What is the cost that's gonna be needed to put into these buildings if we, you know, if we're not to consolidate or something, you know? So I think, you know, that's the reason for this study taking the approach that it is, so that we can actually have options with real, you know.
My concern is some of the facilities in each of the buildings serves a valuable purpose.
Yeah,
I think mostly the old high school. The town lacks an indoor place, a gathering indoor place, even for town meeting of sufficient size. The new high school is way too small. It's not adequate at all. Gymnasium, they have a better weight room than they have a gymnasium, I think, at the new high school. And that gymnasium at the old high school is very valuable, and the locker rooms to go with it. Obviously, the fields have been discussed. I mean, and that's, I don't think any land should be given anyway to anything. So that would preclude some of the development options on that facility and any of these facilities, unless you're outright gonna sell the land with it.
Right, it's my understanding that last winter, 400 kids used the basketball facility, the gymnasium,
Right.
in, you know, private basketball league, a youth basketball league.
yeah.
And it was 400 kids. I mean, that's a lot that go rotate through there. And we're not a town or an area that has a lot of activities, particularly in the winter. I mean, we have a wonderful recreation program that could be expanded even further or enhanced even further to, if they had a large indoor facility that they could use those programs for. Right now, they try to use whatever they can find to do that, and they do a great job, mostly at that annex and the gymnasium in the annex. And so just think if they had a large, modern facility that could serve other purposes, it would serve the youth of this town in a tremendous way. I mean, we talk about the seniors, but the youth, the capacity to have youth programs, I think, would be greatly enhanced by having a larger, more modern facility to be able to use them for, combined with outdoor space.
So what we plan on doing next is to try to study, we received the budget for the town, but I'd like to know individual building costs, what that is, whether that be utility cost or that you have to hire someone to maintain that building, right? Whether that be a building superintendent, a building manager, does one do 3 buildings, 2 buildings, and what is the cost of all that? The upkeep, like I said, the utilities, and add all those costs, that would be the benefit. And then what is the cost that you're currently spending on the high school in terms of utilities? And then what revenue are you getting back? I know there's a daycare and the annex, that's a potential revenue that comes in. Is there any other potential revenue? Does the senior center give you any potential revenue at all through people that are outside Westport? Do they pay a fee? What is that revenue? And try to find out the balance that exists right now before we can go into what could be for potential use. We'll look at, I did check with a couple of demolition companies, you are very accurate, $3 to $4 million. That's what we're getting for prices right now to take. A lot of it's unknown, because once you take, that's why I asked that question about the fill, that got my question, because I didn't know there was fill, but it's good that they didn't fill the building. Because in the 50s, they would fill swamps and build buildings on them.
Well, like you said, it was a pig farm, so we have several in town that
Yeah.
they filled it with everything.
Yeah. So, you look at that and say, okay, once I open that up, now I gotta treat it to today's standards. But if I expound on it and modify it, I can retain it to the standards that have existed for 50, 60 years, which is far more reasonable in terms of cost of construction and reconstruction than just to take it down. But we'll look at all those things and come back with that analysis, and then with some ideas of what we can do for those buildings. Now, some of the ideas we come back with may not be favorable. There's no reason, to get upset about them. That's how we're gonna steer this. We're not gonna have your answer next month. It's gonna take us a little bit of time to guide us, like a pinball. We're gonna be kind of moving to see what is the cost analysis, but what is the stomach of the town. A lot of times in towns where you have a split population, you try to please both ends of the population. You had mentioned phasing, which is an excellent idea. When you phase it, it takes a little bit better for the appetite. It takes longer to do and more expensive to do, because prices keep increasing as that phase go in there. But as long as it's on a trajectory towards that goal, and you know what that goal is, you can build it out towards that, and people start seeing the value of that goal. And then it's intended use. So you use every type of use you could for those existing parts of that high school. If you want to develop that as the overall building, how do you develop those parts? What do those cost individual? Is there an option to saw cut them off? We talked about the gym being used a lot as an example. Do you take the gym off and use it for something else, parking and whatnot? A lot of you say, no, hell no, right? 400 kids this year. I'm using that as an example. There are different things you can take off. And, classroom buildings, classroom spaces are pretty restricted. The ones in the 50s are a little bit more wider spans than, let's say, the annex buildings, which were concentrated to smaller spaces because of the spans. So we'd look at that as well for that potential use and reuse.
I think, David's famous for saying this. He'll come in and say, we want a master plan. But what we're trying to get to is of a list, like a wish list, or items you really think you need, then you take those and you plan them out. So you have a master plan for how these things may be in the end, but you phase it as what can we afford first, what can we afford next, what can we afford 3 and 4. So in 10 years, you may achieve what you want, but the impact and cost is not so great. It's not one lump sum, bam, $80 million. Maybe it's 5 million, maybe it's 10, maybe, incrementally, you get to where you need to be in 10 to 12 years out, right? There's a way to do that.
Well, from a coding standpoint, how can that be achieved, or can that be achieved if we were to want to use part of that space, say, 3 years, 5 years, we're only going to use, how much does it impact the entire building from a code standpoint?
Well, I think we'd have to look at how you could compartmentalize it.
Right,
Almost
okay.
like, again, like, not that you mothball one piece of it. If it stays one building, I don't see how that would work, because you can't have one boiler
Okay,
just
that
serving
was
one
what I was
piece,
getting at. Right,
But
okay.
if it's sections that you know that you can occupy, they're gonna need to be brought up to standard anyway, so it may have its own heat and its own cooling, and then do you have the infrastructural capacity? Do you have the water for the restrooms? Do you have gas for that? Or whatever the need is for that piece? And then you're looking ahead for what will I need for the next? Do I oversize this, knowing that the second one's coming? So I think that you could strategically do it. That'll be a little bit more in-depth.
You know, and master plans typically will take on not small to large, but large to small.
Yeah.
Because a lot of the infrastructure you have to put in, whether that be utilities, whether that be mechanical upgrades.
The
you'd
power
upgrade-
plant, right.
Yeah, so a lot of times, you know, you do a bond for, say, a school system, and they spend $5 million and all they do is replace the windows and the heat. People say, what do we just spend $5 million on? They don't understand it, because you don't immediately see it. So you sprinkle it with things that you can immediately gain. That be function spaces. So you have a little bit of a function space, but you do the infrastructure that's connected. That may be phase one. Phase two may be another piece of the puzzle gets added on with a little bit more infrastructure put onto that. And you balance that off, and people start to see that. But you agree on a master plan schedule. You agree on what the cost will be today and what it's going to be tomorrow, and people see it as a bigger plan. Because if you're, Andrew's right, if you hit the taxpayers with $100 million to do all this, just throwing those numbers out, those aren't real numbers.
Just a big number.
They will, a lot of them will just say, no way, I can't afford that. You're gonna take me right out of this beautiful town that I love.
Right.
And that's not the objective. The objective is how do you transition something that should have been transitioned along the way, but obviously you have a new high school. That was where your focus was. So now what's the next step is to transition this slowly.
And if I can just sprinkle a little thought too, is anything that generates revenue, right? So you almost have to throw that throughout the whole project, because if you see, okay, so not everything is coming out of the taxpayers, but
Right.
there is a component that's generating revenue to
Pay
help.
for maintenance.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
Pays for the
So,
maintenance.
and I
Yeah.
think that component of revenue, it's important in the whole process.
Good point.
You know, the
The revenue
developer-
is in the buildings.
Yes.
And I think you had put down a good point a few minutes ago, and we said, well, certain buildings or certain land is worth more than others.
Right.
And then you have the cost of doing nothing on top of, so there's a plus and minus back and forth, it's like a seesaw effect. Okay?
Right.
The high school is probably the biggest albatross in terms of value of the property. But some of the properties that have these unique features that people love and don't want to change are gonna be some of our biggest potential revenue sources for financing some of the things that we would like to do.
Right.
So those are gonna be the trade-offs that I'd like to see sometime in the next couple of presentations.
Yeah.
So that you can do that value clarification of what we want versus what we need.
And I think as a committee, I think we gotta go down that road together. We're not just gonna say, you know, here it is, and unveil
No, I
this
agree.
big dream. We're all gonna come to the same conclusion. And the hopes is that as we come to the same conclusion, the people around us, the people in the public, will also see the benefit of that conclusion, and everyone will be for it. It's not gonna take rocket science, because what I heard tonight, we're all on the same page. We all know what exists. We all know the big elephant that exists. It's just how do we get there?
Well, two quick things, because I know the time's running. One, is I'd like to see, and I don't know how it gets done, solicitation out there in the community and everywhere to get every idea that anybody has out on the table now, so that we can, let's not have them all come in at the end of it, let's flush them out now. There's ideas out there we never thought about. I'll show you an example. This is in that little thing that they hand out at Leeds. There's a couple women who were looking for space all over the place, and they're in Fall River now. They started over in Newport someplace. They're probably not ideal, but this is just exactly the kind of thing that.
Yeah, leasing a space to start a business,
I would
right?
encourage us to think about either getting some articles in the paper, on the website, and I don't know what other means of communication we have, word of mouth, to get anybody and everybody, you got an idea, get it out here on the table now.
And what I always say, John, is you gotta show people the problem, they have to agree on the problem, right? So if we do all that due diligence of the numbers, you present that in a public forum. Maybe we don't have it here, maybe we have it in the existing auditorium, where people can all go to that space, and then we present those problems, those are the numbers, with potential options, and have a similar meeting to this, where you get those people from all over giving you different ideas, now that they're armed with the basis of that knowledge of how much it costs to do nothing.
The other half of what I'm talking about is the purchase of, because then you gotta win your way through those various options and then analyze them on a cost basis, a use basis, code basis, and all these other things. And hopefully we come down to a couple things that we present at some point to somebody.
So, to the point about, future public meetings, the schedule that you all presented has 4 additional meetings. I believe the next one would be March 19th, which is a Wednesday night. And you had noted that it would be an options workshop with a focus on previously considered options for that one. My question is, would it, and the meeting following would be a new options development workshop. Would it be worth kind of moving up and say both of those might be more focused, not focused, but I mean, we would open it up to new options and solicitations like, or new ideas, put it out there
I think it's,
people want to bring new
yeah,
ideas.
I think the danger is when you try to tell them new options without first hearing them, they may reject those options. You want to let them have the facts, let them come up with different options, we'll look at all those options, and then you present what that option is, so what about my idea? Well, we looked at that idea, and this is what we got for a cost, and that's why we routed this way. So everyone understands that we're all kind of going in the same way. And that's the end of the goal, is to get everyone on the same page.
Okay.
And doing those things.
Yeah, the majority.
Good job.
You're never gonna make.
51%, that's what you need.
Of course. Okay, and just to make an announcement, I did have this on the email to the committee, but the dates that are currently set for the upcoming meetings as part of the schedule here is Wednesday, March 19th, an options workshop. The new options development workshop would be on Thursday, April 24th. A presentation with the committee and public at large, or this is kind of, I guess, the large, public presentation. That would be on Wednesday, May 14th, and the final study public presentation.
What was that? I'm sorry.
So Wednesday, May 14th, and then Wednesday, June 11th.
What's the one in April, 16th?
April
24th. 24th.
What's this?
And I will make sure that this, June 11th.
June 11th.
So March 19th, that's a Wednesday, Thursday, April 24th, Wednesday, May 14th, and Wednesday, June 11th. And I will make sure that that gets out, publicly as well on Facebook and I think certainly get it in the shorelines, and we'll see how else we can disseminate that, but.
I was going to see if anyone from the public has anything.
I was going to say, I wanted to ask, is there anything further you all had at this time?
I'd like to
Maybe we're
say one
set.
thing, Chris.
Go right ahead.
To take a look at the adaptability of the offices that school has moved out of and the size that's existing there on consolidating the municipal building, because I think if that wasn't too significant, we could very easily accommodate the parking problems with the front of that building and creating a parking lot in front of the building.
Right.
One of the things that I'm hearing from the people is they don't want to see those beautiful trees leave, but if we took the trees out and put some new landscaping in, we could make a parking lot that would work for a municipal, town building.
Or you thin them out.
Yeah.
Well, there's some out front, yeah, the big ones.
Just one question. If we were to use it on a limited use basis, right? Any ballpark number to get us in there? Is just moving the municipal offices over there, if we just kind of picked up our existing desks and put them in there? I know there's not
I don't
air
wanna give-
conditioning.
I don't want to give you a number tonight, I don't know, because whatever number I throw
You
out.
fix on
I've already given you a big number that people are gonna remember and use it against me, but I try not to.
Oh, you said.
No,
Yeah, I try to have facts to back
Well,
up that number.
forget the number, but as far as some of the improvements that you see would have to be made at a minimum
Yeah.
for us to do that.
We can work on that and get that number. I would call it the bottom line provision, right?
Yep.
That's the last thing, the bottom line to get in there.
one of my concerns with that would be is like an emergency situation, like say we're gonna do this heating and air, we got the grant, we gotta use the grant money, and we can't stay here while that's being done, you know, or like something, like we got the problem with the annex, and all of a sudden we can't use it
Yeah.
for that use.
So there's one danger there is that people get accustomed to say, well, they're in there, why do I have to do any more modifications? If you want to keep with a master plan, it has to be a schedule, you have to keep doing that.
Well,
master-
and we wanna eliminate this being all over the place,
Yeah.
consolidate it so we can be more efficient,
Yeah.
so we don't wanna go away with that, but if we get some idea, hey, in case this situation comes up, because it quite possibly could, Jim, it could say, hey, we can't do this with you occupying it, because we got encapsulated asbestos under the floor.
Right. Okay.
So, yeah. No, I'm just thinking would be the number. Say, we have a square footage takeoff, but the number of staff, the number of offices needed, that's an easy type. This is 20, can 20 fit in this space, right? We'll get into that.
Yeah, but I'm changing use, so if I'm
Right.
changing use, I gotta do a code review to find out
Right.
what
I think
impact that use has.
We got existing offices there. Evan, you know what we had in there?
We have currently,
Yeah.
we have the business office that's still in there, in the out-of-school time, that's.
But
and
wasn't
there
there
are
offices that we
for them.
set up in there for when we got out of the, middle school? I heard something like that. There's office space that we were using,
That I'm not aware of.
some existing
At that
office
time,
space.
no.
But you guys got all the stuff.
Okay,
Look
yeah,
and see
yeah.
what we got in there. I've only been through the building a couple
But
of
that
times.
administrative space in the back is still, that is office space, that's over there, that's what that was designed for, off the back, sort of the back of the building.
And some of that is vacated, right?
Correct,
Right.
correct.
But some of it's occupied, there's people occupied every day, they go there.
Right, right. There are some offices there that are not there anymore, the superintendent's office, human resources have moved, but.
Just in the last year.
Right,
They had
right.
been there up until the last year.
And why do the people still remain there? The lack of space?
It's not so much, there were issues raised with insurance costs with the building if it was under a certain occupancy, there were other issues, so the out-of-school time programs there, a few offices remain, obviously the basketballs are used and the fields are also used, so that's the current school use.
Okay. How many, if I could ask just a couple more questions, because you're a great resource, how many offices would you say were designed to exist? Not the ones that just moved out a year ago, but designed to exist there now? How many offices would you say? Or what's the space you would say is?
I say roughly, yeah,
Size of this floor maybe, or two of these floors?
probably, yeah, I would say that's accurate, yeah, yeah.
It'd be easier just to.
It's a couple of,
Yeah.
Can we just contact and come look?
sure, yeah,
Okay, It's
yeah.
easier to,
yeah.
than to right now.
Yeah.
How many?
There were a couple of larger spaces that are there.
Yeah.
That function as sort of a cubicle setup.
Right.
So there are a few that are like that. There are others that are dedicated office space. The superintendent's office, the secretary's office, human resources, those are all sort of separate.
You get the
But there were a couple that are larger that sort of operate with desks that are there.
The old
That's how they were
Oleg
designed.
space.
Yeah.
It was the old, right, the old.
So I believe her name
The rest
was
is golf.
Kim, right?
Kim
Facility, yeah.
Oledette?
She was telling us that she had to run heating upstairs, even though no one was upstairs, because that's just the way the systems were zoned, you know, that way. So there's
She
huge
had a lot of
inefficiencies there.
knowledge of that building too, that was good. So, absolutely.
I would recommend, maybe contacting Michael Duar, who was the former maintenance guy who, for 30 years there, as a contact to also reach out and talk to.
Was that who she took over, sort of? when-
Yeah.
Okay. 'cause
He
you
knew
mentioned that.
a lot of things, about a lot of things in
Yeah.
those buildings, so.
Michael
Duart,
Duarte.
yeah.
Oh, yeah.
All right.
I wanted to ask a question, just when you mentioned the grants, and anything that's pending right now that you guys have received to improve any of the buildings that may be,
Transferable.
yes,
We just had that one grant, roughly about $600,000 with incentives.
okay.
Is there a time frame on that?
Yes. There's normally a cap, right?
Yeah, I don't know what the time frame is. I can get that for you.
Okay. Like,
And-
It's Green Communities.
and then if it's not used at a certain time,
Right,
or if it's used and you then, say, abandon it, do you have to pay it back? Is there any type of restriction on it?
That's a guy, I haven't,
Okay.
I will check on that. I'm not aware of that. That's a good question.
kind of like a sunset clause, you gotta
Yeah,
use it
it's
within a certain time frame, or you lose it, or.
And on the subject of grants, I think it is gonna be important when you look at the individual building costs and the cost per square foot, and making sure that that includes money that's been received through, and spent through grants, and not through the general operating budget, because that, I mean, without that piece, you don't really have a clear picture of how much has actually been spent or may need to be spent
Yeah.
down the road as well, so. I think what I would like to say, just to kind of cap everything here tonight, is the staff of the town of Westport and the departments have made a living out of doing more with less. I mean, we mentioned the rec department. This town didn't have a rec department a few years ago, and what they've been able to do with very limited funding out of the general budget. I mean, pretty much all the programming is self-sustaining grants. I mean, you know, there's this, I think a single salary is what comes out of the general budget. And that's just an example, and you have lots of dedicated workers that are stuck in small offices in a corner, right? And I think, so there's a lot of just being used to doing more with less. And I think we have a great opportunity here to show that there might be a path forward an economical path forward to allow a little bit of breathing room, shall we say.
Yeah.
And I think that's something to keep in mind for sure. So at this time.
Everybody deserves a good working space.
Yes,
You spend
absolutely.
a lot of time there every day, right?
Yeah.
And I gotta say, everyone has been so far excellent, with knowledge, participation, friendliness. We've got no resistance at all, which is nice.
That's excellent. Excellent to hear. Not surprising, but excellent to hear.
We appreciate your help.
Yeah, thank you.
No,
No,
So,
but that's great to have, right?
Yeah.
You don't want to have someone opposed to you looking into our closet. You're like,
very true, very true. So at this time, I just wanted to ask one more time, if anyone from the public wishes to make any comments now or ask any questions, be happy to allow anybody to do so. And seeing no one, I guess at this time, I'll just say thank you all once again, and I'm sure we'll be in contact between now and the next meeting date for sure, so.
I'm sorry, I just thought of one. You mentioned the next 4 meetings are options for development workshops. Is there a mechanism or way you want the general public to submit, like, their ideas, or would that happen within the timeframe of the meetings?
write them down and bring them with you.
Yeah.
Would be the best thing.
or send them in.
Yeah, I don't know how.
I mean, so I guess Jim, could we just have I mean, I know at one time there was a request, an official request for proposals put out. Would it be worth putting out another blurb, if nothing, maybe not an official, fee or anything like that, but just putting it out there that, hey, we're
doing this.
bring your ideas to the next options. And that was actually my previous question about the next options workshop. If
Yep.
you wanted to limit it
Clarify,
to.
Mr. Chair, I don't use the word request for proposals.
Yeah.
Talk
Right.
about a public meeting.
A public meeting. At
Discuss-
one point in time, there was an actual.
That goes down a
RFP that
rabbit
went
hole
through.
of its own.
Yeah, no, that was a previous version of the committee did actually put out actual RFPs there. So this would be more of just bring your ideas to the table, for
Right.
sure.
It would be probably an invitation, right? An invitation to the public. Would that be something that, I don't know how,
Would you all be prepared to discuss some of these at the next meeting on the 19th of March? Okay,
Or if
that's-
you want to mail them in, then we just read them off. And I think this is televised, right?
Right.
Absolutely.
Is it easier for you to have questions in advance? I mean,
We
I
love
would
'em.
think.
We love them, we do it either way. You give us to us in advance, we're more prepared.
Right.
Or we're prepared, other than that, we'll have more statistics. We do different meetings, you do public meetings, and you bring them in. When we get to the next, let's say when we get to the point where we know what we want to do, when we're in agreement, then you gotta sell it, then you go to hockey
I'm
games,
thinking about
baseball
earlier,
games.
getting ideas.
Usually public meetings where you offer some kind of food. That usually generates people to get their
I'm
little.
pretty hungry.
How about if we had the public
No,
meeting right
hey,
at the high school?
I draw, so.
You know, if we-
I would
if we-
like
instead of having the
big
meetings at-
whiteboards and you.
Yeah.
And you,
We gotta,
your
we
brainstorm.
can have meetings there.
Make ideas, you write them down, and then.
I think it,
Oh, if they're teleporting in?
They're out there somewhere.
if, so I will say, if it's possible to perhaps have the next meeting actually at the auditorium of the old high school, that, I don't think that would be a bad idea, but we can make sure the logistics would work on.
Or even the old gymnasium where the media room or whatever that was, there that we had
Oh, yeah,
the workshop the last time.
The actual media, for
The library.
yeah.
Yes.
Media center.
Well, one thing I would want to make sure is that it would be, we'd have the sufficient equipment to record and make sure it's,
The IT
even if it's not live, at least it's going to be a recorded
The
meeting.
IT
so
guy that
be
was
sure.
from the high school, when we were there, he said it was plug and go, so I think it would be.
For the media center, yeah, well, both the media center and the auditorium, I think, would,
Only one thing, as an idea, every time I go into Lee's Market, actually on the way out, there's always 2 or 3 signs there, billboards, talking about some meeting,
Oh, right.
a library, some.
Historical commission or something, right?
Take a look, go in the store.
Yeah. Oh, it's like a pinup.
Right.
No,
This is on the way out.
Oh, it's a digital
it's a
board?
It's a 3x5 board, and it's all new information going on. There's 2 of them there today, I noticed. Everybody goes in there. Not everybody does, but huge numbers of people go in there. So there's a way to reach out to all kinds of things. The library does it. I think the senior center does it.
The school system probably is another venue to invite
Notifications out.
notifications through the,
Notifications,
to the
newsletters.
parents, say.
We will try to get we will try to get the word out.
Right.
absolutely, yeah.
And we can probably put something together as to what the purpose of that meeting is, in a very few
Right.
words, something graphically, you know.
Do a board, yeah.
We need
Yeah.
your ideas, we need your thoughts, inviting the public.
And then I'll sneak into Lee's and try and put it up, and I'll get arrested.
No, they'll put it up there, yeah,
Yeah. Yeah,
absolutely.
Like, what are you doing?
Well, you said you have one of the natives that were.
Yeah,
All right, excellent. Well,
that's true, too.
I'll bake some cookies.
Hey,
that's good. I just wanted to thank the three of you for coming tonight. It also means a lot doing this in person and actually coming here.
Oh, yes.
It does make a difference, so thank you all
Yes,
for being here
no.
very much, so.
It's wonderful.
We're excited. We're really, really excited because I think you have great opportunities, and not many towns have what you have. You have an abundance of great buildings, abundance of opportunities, and you have the will, so.
And you've been working at this.
We don't have abundance of money.
they say where there's a
No
will,
one
there's a way. I'm not sure, we'll
You
see
build
if
it, they will come.
we'll see if that will hold true here.
But coming up
Willing
also
to hang
for
on and find out,
ideas
so.
with, to generate revenue. What would
Right.
people do? What would
I think
people
that's
pay?
That's a good way.
Come and
Right.
generate revenue for this whole thing to happen, to make it a reality. You know, it's funny, at the Providence Mall, I saw the sign, level 99, and I wonder, what is this level 99? I could not believe how crowded that is. You know what that is?
What is it?
Yeah,
It's an outdoor facility
Oh.
that's inside for all kinds of activities, but it's
Oh.
packed.
Oh,
And it's young and I call them best. I don't call them old
Right.
anymore, but.
but it's an
young-
innocuous name, right? I
It
mean,
is.
Level 99, you would never
And I
do
am
that.
surprised that people, even from Massachusetts, are coming in
Yeah.
to, it's the latest and greatest, but it's generating revenue for the mall because,
Right. Well, that mall needs it, but,
That's exactly what this Longplex is.
yes,
And that's the 20-somethings in the office said, oh, you should do this. It's a
Yeah.
great place for people to come, and you can climb a
Yeah.
rope, you can move a
oh,
tire.
Longplex over in Tiverton.
Yeah.
Right,
I
okay.
said, bring it here, people
Yeah.
will come.
Yeah.
I'm
yeah,
like,
it's a
I don't even know
great
what that is, so I'm like
location
writing
for
it down.
some.
Yeah.
I have no clue, but
And it doesn't take a lot of money to build some of
Right.
these things. That's what's incredible.
low
Low-
overhead to get
low-
in and, or upfit, and then it could be gone if you needed the space back,
Right.
right? So it's kind of
Right.
interesting model.
Right.
It's a short, long hanging fruit, as they call it, short term.
All right, excellent.
Well, thank you
Well,
again.
yes, thank you again very much. And so very quickly, I'm just going to move on. We've got two action items.
Okay.
Very quickly.
We're
We're
all
looking
set.
for, I know, everybody's.
We're all set with, no, we're all
closed here,
set
so,
with them, right?
The first is just, yes, all set with you all. Thank you so much again. Just very quickly, we have outstanding minutes from the November 25th meeting. I will entertain a
I will
motion.
make a motion to approve the minutes of November 25.
It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? I didn't think so. All right, and the next item,
We can continue on
We'll-
with this
we'll-
for now.
we'll continue
We'll
for the next-
table that item.
all right, thank you to our, thank you for
There-
our ongoing
there
clerk.
wasn't
All right,
wasn't
what-
gonna change.
We are almost adjourned, but not quite. Can I hear a motion?
I will make a motion to adjourn.
Thank you.
Second.
Second.
It's been second. All those in favor?
Aye.
We are adjourned. Thank you very much.